is going to be predominantly here in Omaha, or more appropriately right here. This is the original UNMC, but at the time it went by a different name, and I'll get into that in just a second. But for now, we're going to start all the way back in Omaha as a frontier town. And this is a view from Capitol Hill, which later becomes Omaha High School and is today the location of Central High School. You can see Omaha is a little rough at this time. Zoning isn't a thing. So you have businesses, farms, residences, all side by side. You have dirt streets. You've got mud everywhere when it rains. You can see the river in the background. This is our only highway for commerce and people. There's no railroad yet. And the other thing that there isn't yet is a hospital. Good Samaritan Hospital isn't founded until 1869. And medical care at this time is a bit unruly. That's a nice way of putting it on the frontier. Most physicians learned on the job. And a lot of times the cures in some of these cases were worse than the disease. Surgery was often as often fatal as it was as helpful. Germ theory was just being discovered in 1861. Antiseptics don't show up for another 30 years. So that's the 1890s. So there's really, you kind of, maybe you'll make it. On the frontier, you would apprentice to a preceptor, which was an established physician, for 3 years. You would first read with the doctor, and then you would ride with the doctor, and that was the sum total of your training. You could potentially have a couple medical courses at a university. You could maybe have some basic laboratory work. You might dissect a cadaver. But in this system, who your teacher was vital to how successful your practice would be and whether your patients would survive. And obviously there's no regulation of this system. So in many cases, the students are used as sort of cheap labor for the preceptor, and the quality of medical care can vary greatly depending on your physician. There were some East Coast educated physicians who made their way out to the prairie. They were knowledgeable, they had been trained, but then there was just as many who had gone through the preceptor method of learning and didn't know what they didn't know. And so inspires confidence. So it is against this background in 1869 that the original Omaha Medical College is chartered. It's a proprietary school that never actually materializes, and by March 1870, so less than a year, it's actually dissolved. And this is a quote from the board secretary minutes of the last meeting, that it's dissolved, quote, owing to a wrangle among the faculty and too much bad blood, end quote. So not exactly sure what all went on, but it wasn't good. And then in 1875, there's an effort by the University of Nebraska to establish a medical college in Lincoln. And despite great interest, there's no room, there's no funding, and there's no hospital in Lincoln to provide any clinical experience. So this brings us back to Omaha. In 1880, 3 of the original founders from the Omaha Medical College in 1869 team up with 3 other physicians and open the Nebraska School of Medicine Preparatory on the Hellman Block at 13th and Farnham. This is where the Jean Leahy Mall was. The school had a 20-week curriculum, and tuition was $30. It's about $800 in today's money, so it wasn't cheap. And the aim of the school was to prepare students to go to medical school elsewhere. T.D. Haldeman, he's in the red box there, he was a member of the first class, and he describes the facilities, also in the red box, thusly. The faculty had rented 2 small rooms and a dark closet. The lecture room was about 20 feet square and was furnished with a secondhand stove, a dozen common chairs, and a small wooden table. The dissecting room was perhaps about 10 by 12 feet, and there was a 6 by 8 foot closet across the hall, in which was kept the box containing the material for dissection. The janitor and his wife, who were medical students, lived on the same floor and occupied the remaining 3 rooms. So this is where medical education in Nebraska begins in a formal sense. There were 14 students, as you can see from here. The smaller ovals are the students, the larger ones are the faculty. And within these students, there were 2 women and 1 African American. W.H.C. Stevenson right here, was the first Black physician in Omaha and began his medical education at the Nebraska School of Medical Preparatory School. The six of these faculty became the founders of the soon-to-be christened again Omaha Medical College. The first was Robert Livingston. Was of Plattsmouth. He served in the Civil War as captain of the 1st Company of Volunteer Infantry in the Nebraska Territory. He goes on to be the first president of the faculty, basically the dean, and he teaches the principles and practice of surgery until 1885. Second founder, Samuel Mercer, builder of the Mercer Mansion, an ancestor of the Mercers of the Old Market development. So the M's Pub fire that happened a few years back, that was the Mercer building. This is the patriarch of that family. Victor Kaufman here is buried actually in Holy Sepulchre Cemetery, overlooks UNMC. So I think that's a particularly little factoid that's appropriate given our conversation. He helped start all of this. Jacob Denise is the assistant surgeon to the 27th Ohio Volunteers during the Civil War, and he comes to Omaha in 1868 as a professor of physiology and a clinical lecturer on the diseases of the ear and eye. He's dean twice for the college, and he's an organizer of the Nebraska State Medical Society, very highly regarded as for his medical knowledge and ethics. Richard Moore was the Omaha City physician from 1876 to 79. And last but not least, Wellington Gibbs he founded this college, but he also helped found the University of Omaha. So in 1881, the faculty gets together and they build this building in September. It was completed at 11th and Mason Streets. It cost $4,300, which is about $115,000 today. And that money was invested by each of the faculty that I just named. So they were highly invested, literally, in the school. And it stood adjacent to St. Joseph's Hospital, which was used for its clinical instruction. This was at 12th and Mason. The college was at 11th and Mason. Now, this new building had two large lecture rooms, a laboratory, library, a museum of medical specimens, one patient's room, dissecting and anatomist room, and is, quote, filled with every convenience of a well-equipped medical college, end quote. So its first class has 35 students, it graduates 8 seniors, and to become a student at Omaha Medical College in 1882, you had to present to the faculty satisfactory evidence of a good moral character, be at least 18 years old, and possess a credible English education. And what's really important that I think is just unique for this time period is women were admitted on the same basis as men. So in that way, it was a rather progressive entrance requirement. In 1886, the college, building and all, is moved to 12th and Pacific Streets where the downtown post office is. And the clinical hospital shifts to the Douglas County Hospital. Reason for this, Creighton University has established its own medical program and was using St. Joseph's Hospital for clinical instruction. So that shifts to the Douglas County Hospital. Now, meanwhile, all this is going on in Lincoln. The University of Nebraska is trying to establish its own medical department. It tried it at first in 1875, and now it's trying again. It does establish a 4-year program in the basement of Old University Hall. And then, as later on in the history of the two towns, there was much rivalry between Lincoln and Omaha. And so Omaha Medical College is a proprietary school. You have to pay to get in. Lincoln offers free tuition to get students and succeeds in bringing in 55 students into its class. Now, there are 3 different types of doctors that are teaching, or physicians, I should say, that are teaching in this department. There's the allopathic, which are dealing with diagnoses and treating with drugs and surgery. There's the eclectic, which typically uses like botanical remedies and physical therapy to treat illness. And then the homeopathic, which is a holistic treatment of the person and uses remedies from natural sources, vegetable, mineral, animal. And all these 3 disciplines are coexisting in this one department. So there was some infighting, the very different mindsets, but ultimately, after 4 years in 1887, the department folds because Lincoln still does not have a hospital for clinical instruction. So Omaha effectively wins the medical school affair, and for the next decade or so, the Omaha Medical College sees remarkable growth to the point that this new three-floor masonry building is constructed, same place, 12th and Pacific, and this one costs about $500,000 in today's money. There were a number of new amenities for the faculty and students. On the first floor was a student lobby, recreation room, pharmacy, and 6 clinic rooms. The second floor had offices for professors, rooms for patients, a reading room, the medical specimen museum, the chemistry lab, which you see here, and a large lecture hall that could seat 275. And then the third floor contained rooms for dissection. This is the gross anatomy room for dissection and chemistry, as well as a microscope room and a smaller lecture hall to seat 125. So also important to note, the building was steam heated, it was lighted, and it provided the luxury of modern plumbing. So I'll just leave that one right there. Most of the teaching up to this point, for Omaha, was extremely heavy on demonstration. So there was lecture and demonstration, and several of the faculty used what they called the college dispensary for daily clinical teaching. You could walk in off the street and be treated as long as you allowed the students to observe. So Omaha Medical College deems this essential to instruction, and most of the other medical schools at the time are focusing only on classroom instruction. There's no hands-on component, and you're really just thinking of everything in theory. The faculty, with this method, treated up to 6,000 patients a year at the college clinic. And so this picture here is August Jonas, who was teaching a surgical clinic, and you can see the students. My favorite one is this gentleman here in the foreground. I can't tell if he's about to get sick or if he's asleep, but he's my favorite guy when I look at this picture. In 1899, the medical college, same location, 12th and Pacific, expands and more than doubles its space for labs, classrooms, and offices. So this was the original building that we were just talking about. And so you can see how much larger and how much more successful. So the college is just continuing to grow. Now, during all of this time, there are other changes happening. There's a trend toward the scientific specialization and greater need for basic education before entering medical school. And proprietary schools like OMC, Omaha Medical College, they can't keep up necessarily with the academic and financial demands because they are their own self-funded. So they need to meet these new standards of medical licensure and incorporating basic sciences into the education. And so they start to seek out university affiliations. They have a couple false starts, but 1902, Omaha Medical College joins up with the University of Nebraska as the College of Medicine. So you can kind of say maybe Lincoln won the medical school affair. So why, after fighting to keep it here, would Omaha do this? Well, University of Nebraska had established the first graduate school west of the Mississippi River and was earnestly pursuing excellence and high standards in its curriculum. And already in 1892, so 10 years earlier, they had established a pre-med basic education curriculum under the direction of this gentleman, Henry Baldwin Ward. And Ward establishes this program, strengthens it throughout this decade, so that in 1902, the partnership makes sense, where you have 2 years of basic science in Lincoln, and you go for 2 years of clinical instruction in Omaha. And so the medical school is effectively split between the two, department in Lincoln, department in Omaha. So with this change, Ward is appointed the first dean of the new college, and within that, he creates a 6-year BS MD degree program. And so then by 1908, in addition to creating this, you can get a bachelor's and your doctor of medicine, you have to have established entrance requirements to even enter the medical school. And this was in advance of any of the other schools across the nation. So he was very much of the mind that we need prepared students to make this program successful. There's some other big changes happening as well. 1910, Abraham Flexner publishes a report where he has analyzed the state of medical education across the whole country and Canada. He visits 155 facilities, and he goes through and writes about their strengths and their weaknesses in facility, curriculum, faculty, and finances. And the basic thing that comes out of it is time for Nebraska to put medical education in one spot. And it worked great because we were already thinking about that. And this may look familiar. So this is our current address for UNMC between 42nd and Dewey. So these plans were already in the works. In 1909, the legislature had appropriated $20,000 for purchasing this site in Omaha, predicated on $50,000 of private funding to be from the private citizens of Omaha for construction of this facility. That money never materialized. So 1911, the Board of Regents goes back to the legislature, gets $100,000 for a single laboratory in Omaha. And this comes under really stiff opposition. Basic problem is, can the university move an arm of itself out of Lincoln? And so the folks that didn't think so actually happened to be more, remember those three departments that were the three types of medicine that were practiced in the Lincoln department in the 1880s? Well, the eclectic medical folks and the homeopathic medical folks were a little irritated that this center was going to be mostly that allopathic, that drugs and surgery type of instruction. And so they were fighting to keep it kind of contained in Lincoln. And so this gentleman, Arthur Stokes, is the person who lobbies tirelessly to bring this vote to the legislature. It takes 10 hearings before it's passed, and then it goes to Governor Moorhead's desk, and the opposition is just like, you can't do this, you can't do this, they can't take this out of Lincoln. His secretary, the governor's secretary, is a friend of the Omaha lobby, and so Governor Moorhead signs this legislation into action so that they can purchase this land. And the opposition immediately files suit in the Nebraska Supreme Court, and eventually the ruling comes down that it is constitutional that the university branch in Omaha and the medical college in Omaha can be established. At that point, the opposition sort of falls apart, and so we get to purchase this land and build this building. So this is the North Laboratory building, the first building on campus. It's completed in 1913 and houses the entire College of Medicine. It's designed by John Latenzer. That name should be familiar to all the historians in the room. Also built the courthouse and Central High School, just to name a couple of his many buildings. This building is completed in spite of the Easter tornado of 1913. It weathers that just fine. It has no damage. And it's considered to be most compact and efficient as far as a medical college. In addition to the most modern conveniences for education, it has a library. So, you know, for me, that's kind of like, yay, we got included. Today it is known as Pointer Hall in honor of Charles William McCorkle Pointer, excuse me. He was the Dean of College of Medicine between 1930 and 1946, and we'll talk a little bit more about him in just a minute. And today it's currently the home of the psychiatry department. So with this move for the entire colleges in Omaha, Arthur Stokes, despite his efforts, is passed over for the deanship. He is a Lincolnite, and Wilson Bridges was the associate dean at the already at the Omaha campus. So he oversaw the 2 years of clinical when the department was split. So he becomes the dean in 1913. In 1915, we get a new dean, and this is Irving Cutter. Irving Cutter takes the reins, and his approach with the Board of Regents as well as the legislature is as a force of persuasion to rapidly expand the college. And so in 1915, he gets approval for $200,000 to build University Hospital and to equip it for service. Again, this building's designed by John Latenzer. It's to be a charity hospital. No patients will be charged for services. It's a state-funded public hospital. It's to care for the worthy poor, was the language used. And its architecture featured long, narrow windows to provide maximum light and ventilation. Above the beds there, you can see the transoms on the windows up here. All of these are open to encourage airflow, and there are mobile curtains, for privacy as they're doing examinations. This was in Unit 1 in 1917. This opens with 130 beds. It also had an operating theater, which allows for students to observe surgeries, again, that demonstration component for the college, as well as an operating suite. Both of these are located on the top floor, north and south respectively. And what's interesting to note is these skylights here. These are still in existence. I've actually gotten up to see them. They're incorporated into office spaces. And if you know how to get there, which I actually had to be taken up there, I did not know how to get up there, and then I didn't know how to get down. So thankfully, a faculty member was able to walk me. But you can actually, they're still there, and they have been incorporated into office spaces. In addition, there was also this nursery, and I love this photo because I think these bassinets here look like those foldable bags you put in your grocery carts now. You just kind of blow out. So it was just funny to me. But this was the nursery, and this was state of the art. Everything about this hospital was state of the art for a medical educating hospital at the time. So Dean Cutter barely takes a breath after the hospital opens in 1917, and he's back requesting more funding. He wants to fund another laboratory building and a home for the School of Nursing. So the first building is the South Lab, which is directly in the middle of the picture to the left. That's completed in 1919, and it becomes the home of the college dispensary, that walk-in clinic that we talked about earlier. And today it is named Bennett Hall after A.L. Bennett, who was a professor of physiology and is the current location of the College of Allied Health Professionals. And then right behind it in 1923 is Conkling Hall. This became the School of Nursing, and it replaced a temporary wooden building that the school had been occupying for 6 years. That building had already burned down once and been replaced, and so this was their permanent home, as it were. Charlotte Burgess here was the superintendent of nursing and director of the school, and she was a force by everything that I have read. She had exacting standards, and she has famously said, "University nurses have no equals." And I would say that her legacy has continued. The School of Nursing is very rigorous, and they take great pride in their strong heritage, as they should. So she started, and it has continued today. So in 1924, the North Lab is expanded to include an amphitheater and lecture rooms. University Hospital gets Unit 2, which you see there in the picture back here. And then, but you can kind of see the look of the campus is starting to come together. Now at this point, I hope you all have realized a very important fact, that this legacy of continual construction that is UNMC goes all the way back to the beginning. And it continues today. But you can start to see how this 42nd and Dewey, the way it looks. This was off of 42nd, was always the entrance to campus. In 1930, Arthur Stokes, our friend from lobbying for this location, is elected to the Board of Regents for the university for a 6-year term, and he tells the Omaha Bee that he wants to establish a great medical center in Omaha, encourage original research, work at the University Medical College and place all health education and disease prevention under the state medical college. And I would say that this is basically, he wrote the mission statement for the college, because these are all things that UNMC holds dear today. It's the public health, original research, being on the cutting edge. All of those things are still with us today. So in 1930, we get a new dean, Charles William McCorkle Pointer, and he is, we talked about him a little bit, he is the longest serving dean of the College of Medicine. He served for 17 years, and boy did he get a doozy of a tenure, 1930 to 1946. So throughout the Depression and World War II, there were still some expansions on campus, but where, Conkling Hall got an addition. There was a service building, a laundry building, some amphitheater and lecture halls added to the South Flab. But really the building part had slowed down quite a bit, but the classes had sped up. In the war years, there were accelerated classes to get new doctors into service. Many of the faculty had entered service immediately once the U.S. declared, once Pearl Harbor, basically. But there was still this need to produce more doctors and nurses. So classes were condensed into 4 9-month sessions to be completed in 3 years. And this is an example of the calendar from our archive. You can see it's war emergency from 1942. The military was also on campus conducting training, influencing student enrollment, placement to fit military needs. And the class of 1944 were the first graduates of this 3-year accelerated curriculum. They wore military uniforms to campus. They conducted drills on Sundays. In addition to their heavy class loads, there were no holidays. And since many of the faculty had enlisted already, students, especially the nursing students, were relied upon heavily for clinical work. And after graduation, they also had accelerated residencies before beginning military service. So they had to be really dedicated to make it through. A couple names you'll recognize from this class, Dr. Leland Olson and Dr. Stanley Trulson, both of whom were in the class of 1944 at the college. So after the war, Children's Memorial Hospital is opened. It's this building here, back here, and we still continue to have a great relationship with Children's Hospital today. So this was here, and then this is Bishop Clarkson Memorial Hospital under construction here in 1953. And both are part of the UNMC family, effectively, and affiliated and merged. So keep this picture in mind, because we will return to this in just a couple minutes. The next game-changing moment after those 2 construction projects was the opening of the Nebraska Psychiatric Institute at 45th and Emily Streets. And this is in 1955 when it opens, and what's really important about this is that it brings Cecil Whitson to the college as the director of NPI. Now, Cecil Whitson, kind of like Irving Cutter, is another one of those powerful personalities. He becomes the dean of the College of Medicine in 1964. And in 1968, he's propelling the college into a new era. There's a new organization in the University of Nebraska, and so I've listed it out here. Many thanks to Dr. Bob Wigton for this breakout, but it really explains how the College of Medicine had a dean who oversaw University Hospital and the School of Nursing. Pharmacy was its own thing, dentistry was its own thing under the old model. In the new model, you have 3 campuses, UNL, UNO, and UNMC. And under UNMC, you get all the colleges, University Hospital, and the institutes. And so, therefore, Cecil Whitson becomes our first chancellor, and he serves until 1972. So at this point, 1968 is the birth of what is UNMC. So in 1969, Whitson changes the entire look of the campus. This had always been, as I said, off 42nd Street, the entrance to campus. And Whitson puts the Basic Sciences building right there. in front of University Hospital. There's really nowhere else to put it. By this point, even though when they bought this property, the idea was it was so far outside of the city that there was plenty of room for growth. By this point in the 60s, it's not outside the city. And so there's really nowhere to go with the Basic Sciences building except right here. And you can see, I believe that is North Hall. That's the North Lab, Pointer Hall there, but university is off to the left. And so this is the beginning of the Basic Sciences building. Here it is completed in 1970. And on top of it is the library building. And this is the beginning of that 42nd Street corridor. As you're going along, you have, as you're driving north, you have the South Lab, Bennett Hall, Wigton and what is now McGugin Library, North Hall, and Clarkson. And so you get that, you start to get that that landmark look to it. Now the library at this time in 1970 is just the library. In 1978, it becomes the Leon S. McGugin Library of Medicine, and it was named in honor of a prominent, longtime Omaha OBGYN, Leon McGugin, and he was a very huge benefactor to the library. And we have just again been renamed. As of July 1st, we are now the Leon S. McGugin Library of Health Sciences. And that really reflects that UNMC is not just medicine. We are a plethora, and we serve all the colleges. And so we are the health sciences. We're not just medicine. And so that is very important in our renaming, but we would not get rid of McGugin. He was a force for the library. So as you, again, as you're driving north, you have this left-hand side that is still there today. And on the right-hand side, as you're driving north, you have what is now the Davis Global Center. You have Sorrell, Williams, and nursing. And so this reflects that in 1972, this is Williams Hall, former home of the College of Pharmacy. And the College of Pharmacy moves from Lincoln to Omaha in 1972. And then also the College of Nursing gets its own building, and dentistry still remains and is still in Lincoln. So now that we've got our thoroughfare taken care of, come 1997, UNMC merges hospital and clinical operations with Clarkson Regional Health Services, which was that Bishop Clarkson Memorial Hospital, to form the Nebraska Health System. Now that statement's real easy to say, but the merger was anything but easy. 1994, Columbia Healthcare Association offers to buy Clarkson for $83.7 million. Clarkson agrees to this, but as the lawyers are going through, they find an agreement signed in 1953 with the University of Nebraska for this piece of land right there. And it said if the Clarkson ever decided to sell that land, that the university had first right of refusal. So in 1995, Columbia sues the University Board of Regents, arguing that this agreement is invalid. And in 1996, there's a ruling in favor of the university that says, nope, first right of refusal is valid and it is enforceable. So that's the end of the merger saga. No, not exactly. In March of 1996, while this is all going on, then Chancellor Carol Aschenbrenner announces that she's negotiated a merger partnership with Allegiant here in Omaha. And this was not well received by the faculty. It didn't make sense to have the Allegiant partnership when the Clarkson stuff wasn't resolved, and Clarkson's right there next to university. And so this results in 28 faculty members presenting a letter of no confidence in Chancellor Aschenbrenner's leadership. Allegiant pulls out of the merger, the chancellor resigns. And then in March 1997, the Clarkson and UNMC, they combine, the university hospitals combine as the Nebraska Health System under the leadership of the new chancellor, Dr. Hal Moore. And then this is physically represented by the construction of the Hickson Center, which joins Clarkson and University together. It is the physical link between the two buildings. That happens in 2002. This was a recent picture that I was able to find on the internet. In 2003, the Nebraska Health System, which is University and Clarkson, they go through an extensive marketing study, and from that point on, University Hospital is known as University Tower, and Clarkson Hospital is known as Clarkson Tower. So that explains some of the naming that you see today. In 2014, the Nebraska Medical Center, Bellevue Medical Center, and UNMC physicians began operating under the name of Nebraska Medicine. And so we still have UNMC, which is a public state university, and now we have Nebraska Medicine, a nonprofit health system, which is the clinical partner to the university. Usually people refer to them as one thing, but they are two different entities. So what is next for UNMC? There's lots of things just finishing up. There's lots of things in the works. The Davis Global Center, you can see it here. It was it's just completed earlier this year before COVID. It is the home of like the IXL, the simulation instruction and things like that, biocontainment. The new Monroe Meyer Institute on the Pacific campus, the Pacific Street campus of UNO, is almost finished. I believe if they're not moving in, they're about to. And so that should be opening later this year. The McCorkle Library is almost finished with its first phase of renovation. Levels 6 and 7 are almost done. We're supposed to start moving in 2 weeks, and excited. We completely gutted those two floors, and it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see it. I didn't even get to see the old library. It was already closed and under renovation when I arrived at the university, so I'm super excited. And then the 8th floor, which will be special collections and College of Medicine offices, is going to be, by December, will be completed. There's also some renovations happening in Wigton Hall, as well as across the street in the Williams Science Hall. That will be the new location of all student services on campus. And so these three are all kind of boxed together in the renovation. Additionally, we have the Wigton Heritage Center, another project near and dear to me. It's a welcome center for campus featuring exhibitions from the special collections and archives, and it will be devoted to university history. And you know, Dr. Bob Wigton he told me he was going to attend the talk today. I haven't seen if he's on here yet, but he is the major donor on this, and a huge help to me in understanding all of the ins and outs of the history of the medical college and the university. And we'll be drawing again from our collections. We'll be loaning from other institutions, and these exhibitions will rotate on an annual or semi-annual basis to keep the stories flowing for all the different historical moments of the campus. And then the next project, the Chancellor Jeffrey Gold had announced this coming up it's for the northwest side of campus, is a public-private partnership that will house a state-of-the-art academic medical facility and a federal all-hazard disaster response facility with military and civilian partnerships for training and treatment of highly infectious diseases, and would also house patient care facilities for injuries resulting from natural disasters. And there's no real pictures of what the next project would look like. It's probably gonna take about a decade to develop, but it will be in this northwest corner of the campus that you see here on the screen. So with that, there's no shortage of things coming up, no sign of things slowing down for UNMC, which is great. And with that, I thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to take questions through voice by unmuting or via the chat box. I'm going to attempt at this point to stop sharing so that I can hopefully see who's raising hands. So I will stop sharing my screen, and if you would like to raise a hand, you sure can. I will also attempt to get to the chat box. I see here from Patricia, is Children's Hospital still associated with UNMC? Yes, it is one of our affiliates. It's not part of us like Clarkson is. It's not under the umbrella. It is a partnership. So physicians and like our pediatrics residents can go over there and do clinical training and things like that. So it's an affiliate, and with the library, there's an agreement where they have access to resources and things. So it's associated, but not under our administrative umbrella, if that makes sense. I see some other in the chat. Let's see. Oh, absolutely. I can share, Shirley. I can provide this to Emma, and I'm sure she has your contact information. I'd be happy to share my slides. That's no problem. Or I guess she's got the recording. Never mind. I see she answered you already. The Epley Cancer Research Center. So yes, the Epley Center. So there's two Epley buildings on campus. There's the Epley Science Hall, and then the Epley Cancer Institute. And I will be very honest in that I haven't done a lot of digging into those particular buildings and where they came from. I did have some pictures of those. They are, Roger, they're on our digital commons on our website. But I don't know exactly all of the ins and outs of that yet. That is one of the areas that I need to do some more research into, and I definitely want to learn more about that. I've just been so enamored by how much history there is, and just even each institute, each building that has been put together on campus and has become part of campus, all of the ins and outs that are related to all of those. There's just so much information. So I'm continually learning. So if there is something specific, I'm happy to unmute. Let's see, if you would like, and then we can chat about that. So Patricia has, how was the Buffett Cancer Center related to UNMC? So Buffett Cancer Center is another of those public-private partnerships with UNMC. So it is part of the campus, but it has its own institutional director, just like Epley, and we allow residents. So actually, you would have medical students, residents, all shadowing faculty, and it's a teaching clinical institution. So it's affiliated very much like university, very much like Children's Hospital is affiliated. So it's a teaching tool, but it is predominantly a patient care opportunity. So those faculty are teaching residents and medical students in the demonstrating through visits with patients and things like that. So that is what Buffett is. It is. It's a wonderful facility. They have fantastic doctors. That is where the Chihuly sculptures are. It's one of the largest collections of Chihuly's work in a medical center, is actually here in Omaha, and it is in the Buffett Cancer Center. Emma, I see you're back.
I have video, so I'll ask my question in person.
Yes!
So you were talking about how in the early history you got a BS/MD. So this is just, you just come out of high school, you take 4 years, and you're a doctor.
6 years. 6 years.
Okay.
So yeah, you would have like the basic education, the pre-med, and then you'd have your four years of medical school.
So the years that modern doctors spend in residency and internships and those things, those are all it's just 6 years, and then you're out on your own.
Yep, in 1908 or 1906, yeah, or 1902 to 1906, and then you start getting more and more added to it. So as the colleges expand and medical practice gets more and more licensed, more and more specialized, you get longer periods of instruction.
Sure, that makes sense.
It's far better than your 3 years of reading and writing. But yeah, so that's kind of how it expands. And within each of these eras, you get more of an expanded requirement for your education. So as things get more specialized, you get longer times of instruction.
And then in its early years, you mentioned like one of they offered entry to, you had an African-American doctor in there as well as a woman. Did they ever revoke those as this becomes part of Nebraska?
Yeah.
The Nebraska college, like, did they ever regress on those before women?
I myself have not seen anything in writing that says we no longer accept these folks, but it did. So in the early years, you did have more of a diversity mix. Then it does become predominantly white males, and now it's changing again. So there's nothing, I don't think, written that says we won't accept these folks, but it just becomes a matter of social.
Sure.
It just becomes the way it is. It's more of a social pressure, maybe, than something actually physically written. Now, I could find something that says that that's not the case, but I have not to date seen anything in writing that said we won't accept people of color or women.
And then the nursing school is primarily women. I noticed that there was a woman.
Yes. Yeah. So that was predominantly women. Yeah. Women led, women run, starting with Charlotte Burgess. Yeah. So you kind of had like the women in this school and the men in this school. And yeah, and I think in the 70s and stuff, I was just reading an obituary of a former alum from the College of Medicine who had to fight to get into medical school in like the 70s. So there is a story there. I don't know it yet, but that's one of those things that we want to investigate more in the Heritage Center, is these stories and to get these people's perspectives.
I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat to see if anyone else has any questions.
Yes.
Take up all your time.
I think
you answered all of them.
Did I get them all?
I think so.
Are there any other questions? Feel free to raise a hand. I will unmute you, and you can ask your question. It's a little easier. We won't do video. I promise I won't turn your camera on. Any other questions or? Well, I appreciate it. I have so much more to learn. It's been so much fun even just putting this one presentation together, and looking forward to learning more about UNMC. There's so much here. I mean, this is just like the tip of the iceberg. So.
All right. Oh, wait, here, Shirley has another question. When did the PA school start? I think that's the physician's assistant. Physician's assistant.
I don't know the date. I am so sorry. That is a program. I just spoke with a few folks over there about adding some stuff to our archive, and I have not done any research myself on the physician assistant program to date. So I do apologize. I don't know what year that was. I think if I came back and gave this presentation in another year or so, I'd probably have more answers to your questions. I do apologize. But I know it's one of the more recent programs. But we're adding programs all the time. I mean, the most recent college is, College of Allied Health Professionals just started in 2016. So, I mean, there's just constant expansion throughout the university and expanding. Oh, Maria, thank you. Maria is our archive associate in the Special Collections and Archives. Bless you, Maria, 1971 is when the PA program started. You are an angel. So thank you, Maria.
1971, that's earlier than I would have thought for the physician.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it really, it's an established program. It's an established program. Any other questions? Anything? I'm opening up the other window. Okay. Well, feel free to reach out. My email is Carrie, Carrie.Meyer, Meyer, @unmc.edu. And we also have a direct line to all of our special collections and archives folks through the history@unmc.edu email. So if you have any questions, want to see photos, need some research assistance, please reach out to us. We are happy to help. We are here working from home, but we can get to a lot of stuff online. And we're in the process of establishing our digital archive. So more things to come, but we'd love to chat with you. Love to talk about history.
All right, thank you so much, Carrie. And like she mentioned to Shirley, I did record this, so if anyone wants this to show us someone who missed it or for any other reason, we recorded the whole thing, so just reach out to me at the admin email and I'm happy to send it out to you guys. But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to Carrie for her great presentation. I know this is weird because you can't hear or see anybody.
It's very strange, but it's okay.
You get you back in a few years when you have all the answers. You're going to do it
right,
and it's going to be very different. I can't wait. But thank you for doing this Zoom presentation for us this time. Really
my pleasure. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And like I said, you're the host now, so it's your job.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.